Good evening, everyone. It's our pleasure to welcome all of you, and we have a great panel of speakers today. We'll just give 45 seconds to go live on Facebook as well. And in the meantime, we can have more and more participants and registrants joining us. So, Dr. Kaul, you can perhaps, maybe start in another 40 seconds from now, and we should be good to go then.
Sure. Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, I think we can start now. So
yes.
Let me begin with welcoming all of you on behalf of the Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. I welcome everyone for this webinar on National Education Policy 2020. And we have titled it as Opportunities, Challenges and Way Forward. That is hosted to mark August 15 to September 15, 2020 as the month dedicated to Indian Independence Day celebrations, and also to celebrate dynamic India-Canada bilateral relations in the domain of higher education and collaborative research that Shastri have been fostering over the period of 50 years. Our panel today has Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe, Chairperson, All India Council for Technical Education, as the lead speaker. And we have joining in with us today is Dr. Janaka Ravanpura. He's from University of Calgary, and Dr. Minnie Thomas, who's the president of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. I just wish to share that we had conducted similar webinar series to commemorate Canada Day by organizing very interesting and thought-provoking discussions on various topics of mutual interest between India and Canada in the month of July and August. And then we really thought that why not to have another series that would give a boost to our audience who have been really actively participating in all the webinars. So we introduced this current, series of webinar to celebrate Independence Day of India. And this is the last webinar in that series. So it's a concluding ceremony as well, Dr. Sahasrabudhe. I'm very pleased to have you here with us. And these, as I said, these webinars were very well received and saw a fantastic turnout and participation from member institutions, and as well as those who were interested to understand what Shastri does and were interested in a particular topic that was discussed in that particular webinar. For today's webinar, which is focused on newly launched National Education Policy of India, which has which was like long standing and long awaited and being held in high esteem by most of us across the board, I would say institutions, universities, organizations, students, teachers, and administrators, everyone have appreciated the details that are presented in that policy. I would say it's a democratic process that was adopted to place this and formally, which came as a approved version of the policy. And everyone seems to be contented with what is stated in the policy, and we have high hopes for future in terms of leading us in a direction that can inculcate a crop of students that are independent and very, very versatile, not as a clone, but as an individual personalities. We have the students and youngsters to serve India as well as international arena. Our Prime Minister has rightly mentioned that the policy is very well aligned with our modern with the vision of modern India, and keeping in mind the global standards of education that should be in India to meet with the challenges and the dreams that we have ahead for all of us. Hopefully, this will create a future generation that is future ready, not just meeting the requirements of the current requirements. So I am indeed pleased to welcome Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe. He's, as I said, is the chairman of AICT, and he is going to be the special speaker for this webinar. I mean, I would say that everybody knows about him, but then still, as a formal process, a brief about Dr. Sahasrabudhe is a professor of mechanical engineering at IIT Guwahati, and is currently holding the position of chairman of AICTE. He has held several important academic research and administrative positions at Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, Tata Consulting Engineers, Northeastern Regional Institute of Science and Technology, and likewise. As an administrator, he has taken up several new initiatives for academic, curricular, and co-curricular activities, entrepreneurship, research, and good governance. And I would say that my interaction with him started long back, and but in between there was a brief gap, and when we reconnected, I could see the great changes that has occurred in the governance and in the overall structure of AICT in terms of its deliverables and its close association as a right hand of Government of India, especially Ministry of Education. So I understand that a lot of effort went into it. And as a leader, I would like to congratulate Dr. Sahasrabudhe for putting his energies and perspective to this particular domain and bringing AICT to altogether different, standards. He has been bestowed with several awards, including Maha Entrepreneur Award 2011, Jeevan Gaurav Puraskar, Mahatma Gandhi Leadership Award for Indian Archives, Achievers Forum, and CRM Times in 2019. Very warm welcome, Dr. Sahasrabudhe, once again, and we are really keen to understand from you, how things are going to change with this introduction of new education policy in India. From the Canadian end, we have Professor Janaka Rawanpura from University of Calgary, who serves as both the Vice Provost and Associate Vice President Research International. He was a full professor and Canada Research Chair in Project Management System for almost 7 years. And before that, he was, he was prestigious director, I would say, for Schulich School of Engineering of University of Calgary before he became Vice President International. He is the founding director of Center for Project Management Excellence and have been the director of project management since 2005. He's a Fulbright scholar and has developed many best practices and tools that have been successfully implemented in construction industry for productivity improvement. Published a number of technical papers and referred journals and refereed journals and conference proceedings. He's a licensed professional engineer in Alberta, Canada, and a professional quantity surveyor in Canada. I would say that beyond these academic endeavors, he's a very warm and compassionate person. And our association with him started at the time when, University of Calgary was moderately engaging with at the international arena, but his leadership has brought University of Calgary to the mind and heart of many people and many organizations like Shastri. I welcome you wholeheartedly, Dr. Rawanpura, for this webinar. Thank you for being here. Also with us is our own president of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute, Professor Minnie Thomas. She is also director of National Institute of Technology, Trichy. And she would be, she's also a busy person as an administrator, but I am thankful that she has agreed to be present for this meeting, cutting short her previous engagement. So thank you, ma'am, for being here. I would say that let's not lose time anymore. And I would now like to invite our own president, Dr. Thomas, to set the agenda for today and invite Dr. Sahasrabudhe to deliver the talk. Over to you, Dr. Thomas. Thank you.
Ma'am, you need to unmute.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Prachi. And I warmly welcome Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe to this Sikhi evening and morning for our Canadian friends. And a warm welcome to Dr. Janaka. Thank you for taking time out to join us. like Dr. Prachi said, we moved our webinars from um, into technical and other topic areas where we can give more to our member institutions and members. And as Independence Month series, we thought of organizing this workshop online session on um, NEP, National Education Policy, which India launched recently, adopted. It is in the implementation phase. And there are multiple facets to it where we want our youth to be future ready. Implementation is going to be the key now that the policy is in place. So we are having dialogues at multiple levels, how best we can implement this policy so that our education system is revamped and our youth who are graduating from higher education institutions as well as from schools are future ready. So regarding, I'm sure Professor Anil will be talking about the policy in detail, but what is relevant to Shastri as such is there is a mention of a National Research Foundation, in the policy which will help Shastri and the member institutes very much. That is one thing, and also there is a need to increase, to set up a credit bank. So this is also relevant to Shastri because we will be looking at our member universities from India and abroad to collaborate and make some agreements so that credit transfer is possible between our member institutes, because we admit only standard institutes to Shastri because there is a bottom line. We have a threshold, we have a benchmark. So this may be a good starting point for a credit bank, as well as Indian universities are going to be multidisciplinary universities than standalone institutes, because what is envisaged in the policy is MERU, multidisciplinary education and research university, like the universities abroad. So this is also very relevant to SICKI because till now we had separate engineering institutes, separate law, separate medical, but maybe in a few years, if the policy is implemented properly, we will have large universities like University of Calgary. We do have, but then we may have more. So this also increases our chances of collaborating with larger universities. And of course, the biggest positive thing about the policy is that, we want to increase our gross enrollment ratio from 26 to 50%. So that's a huge challenge where we need help from established universities abroad, especially from Canada. So these are a few points I thought I would mention where SICKI comes into significance. And we will be working with other agencies to take this forward. And I look forward to the policy, presentation and the implementation plans from Dr. Anil Sasabudde. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. And I'm sure this will set up, this will give some idea to our Canadian friends as to what is the gist of this policy. So with these few words, I welcome Dr. Anil Sasabudde to start his presentation. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Minnie Thomas, President of Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute. You have taken over and it has been flourishing actually. And my friend, Dr. Prachi Kaul, Director of SICKI, whom I know for quite some time, as she rightly said, when I was in IIT Guwahati and College of Engineering Pune, we had interactions, but there was a gap and again we came together. Same is the case with Dr. Janaka Rohanpura, who used to come to College of Engineering Pune, and we were about to start some joint programs actually in terms of some courses in management, but somehow it did not kick off at that point in time. So that is the story of that. And we have Dr. John Kershaw. I think he's joining or he's already there. I do not know, but he is also here. but all the others who have joined from Canada and India. Good morning to Canadian people and those who are in India. Good evening to all of them. And this is very interesting that Prachi asked me that we should have a seminar. Well, we have an Independence Day series, Independence Month series rather. And then this is the fag end of that, and almost all the issues concerned with Indo-Canadian acceptance of various types of activities have been already undertaken. But last of the series, but nevertheless very important because we are talking about new National Education Policy 2020 and opportunities, challenges, and way forward. So let me get back to some of the basics. India, after independence in 1947, the first commission was formed by Dr. Radhakrishnan in his name. He was the second president as well. And the report talked about several things. I think there is not much actually new in that sense compared to 2020 policy vis-a-vis the Dr. Radhakrishnan report of the early independence era. But there are certain very interesting things which have been transformed as well in this new policy. A few things which are common, I will come to them first and then come to the transformational changes which have been thought about in this new national education policy. We have gone a long way since independence. Then there was another policy in 1964, went up to 66, and finally it was announced in 66. Then there was another one in 1986. A revised one of that version came in 1992. So essentially, today we were having 1986 policy for last 34 years, and this was a policy in the 21st century. So that is very, very significant. There are two things which are important. A lot of changes have happened in terms of both education sector, in terms of technology, and in terms of all aspects of social life in the whole world actually. And that is why 21st century, where we talk about industry 4.0, we talk about education 4.0 on one side, and then the United Nations driven what we call as sustainable development goals, SDG 4, which is very significant about how education and sustainability are to be taken together. I think these are the rapid changes which have happened in the last couple of decades, and they find their reflection in this particular policy. And the policy is also is a very long drawn process. In fact, it took nearly 5 years. There was first a committee which submitted a report, and then it was taken forward. And Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the chairman of the Indian Space Research Organization, was the chair of this. And we had also people like Dr. Manjul Bhargav from Princeton. Actually, he is an Indian, but field medalist, which is almost equivalent to Nobel Prize in mathematics. So he's a field medalist. He was part of the committee, and he spent almost 1 full year here in India taking sabbatical from Princeton. I think so. People who were absolutely passionate in terms of future-ready engineers, as rightly pointed out by Minnie Thomas, or future-ready graduates, in turn. So that was the vision with which the entire policy started. So there was a lot of connectivity between the school education to the higher education. I'll just briefly tell about school education, very vital, very important for connecting to the higher education. We want to have 100% gross enrollment ratio in school education by 2030. So in the next 10 years, already we are about 90-95% in most of the states, even 100%. But the entire nation should be 100% in terms of school education gross enrollment ratio. And then starting the schooling, instead of at the age of 6, which is currently the practice, it would start from the age of 3 itself. And instead of the present 10+2 system, what is talked about is 5+3+3+4. That means it takes 15 years rather than present 12 years. But starting point being at the age of 3 instead of at the age of 6, the terminal point after 5+3+3+4 is exactly the same as present 10+2 system, which is around 18 years of age. So I think in that terms, we should understand the parallelism between the two. What is significant is informally there were also what is known as preschooling, whether it is called nursery, lower KG, upper KG in certain terminologies, balwadi in some other places. So there was some informal way of engagement of children in the form of preschooling, but it was not formalized. Now it is getting formalized, number one. Number two, the initial training or teaching learning will happen in mother tongue. Very important, because a child from home, when a child comes to school, there must be no abrupt change actually. That is the idea. So whichever state the child belongs to, it will be starting with the mother tongue, and gradually after about first 5 years of education, that is first 5 which I talked about, they will gradually enter into other languages, maybe English, maybe the national language Hindi, maybe Tamil, Telugu, whatever it is. So I think different languages, and it's a 3 language formula. It's a diverse country. People after they graduate have to move from one place to the other place. So knowing different languages is very significant and important. So on one side, stress on the mother tongue in the beginning, but gradually move out and then have multiple languages study is also possible. So this is one part of the story. Second is right from about the class 6, the present class 6, that means that the newer one, 5+3, vocationalization will begin, skills. Most of the students today, even graduates, lack in skills, and that is one of the questions which industry talks about in terms of employability. And therefore, when they start getting skilled at the age of say that 3+5, that means age of 8 itself, maybe it is not only coding, computer AI skills, but also carpentry, fitting, welding, electronics technician, computer, any of these kind of new age skills, as well as some of the very ancient skills. Both of them are going to be taught from the school itself, so that one of them, which is very, very important to be reached, is dignity of labor, which by and large, unfortunately lacks in India, and therefore people all clamor for white-collar jobs, and therefore blue-collar jobs also equally important if the nation has to develop it. So that is the philosophy with which schooling will continue. And at the end of the 12th standard, when they come into the higher education, which we talked about, whether it is art, science, commerce, engineering, Madam has already said just now that it is going to be multidisciplinary, very important. Because there were specialized universities and colleges established in the last 70 years after independence, including totally a very, very highly specialized as well. And they bring in not great value to the student after he graduates, because they are all having what you say a single-minded approach, and they don't see left and right side. And therefore, whether it is liberal education, whether it is humanities and social sciences, which is so significant and important in life, the importance is given to that, and therefore multidisciplinary universities become very important. So there are 2 alternatives for the institutions which are already specialized. Either they expand in terms of other programs, or they coalesce, join together hands with other institutions, which is already happening in terms of RUSA. Colleges which are there in different domains, they join together and form a cluster, and cluster university concept is already there. So either they do a clustering, and then like-minded people come together both in private and government sector and can become a multidisciplinary university, or if they have enough land space, built area, they can expand themselves into multidisciplinary. So this is one aspect which is significant and important for higher education. The next important thing is the kind of flexibility which is being talked about. And this flexibility has probably come because of sustained consultations which happened before this policy was drawn. More than 2.5 lakh local bodies, several educationists, right from industry bodies, everyone was associated in giving their ideas, and therefore this multidisciplinary and what we say as a lot of flexibility which has come in is significant. And in the flexibility, when I say the exit and entry systems are very powerful in this. So a student who joins a program in graduation, in fact, all graduation programs are going to be 4-year programs. One can exit at the end of even 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, but essentially degree programs, including in the domain of arts, commerce, science, like in US universities, which is a 4-year program, our programs also will become 4-year. Engineering was already 4 years. Medicine was 4.5, architecture 5 years, but essentially everything would be 4+ actually, and nothing less than that. And the students, if they don't find themselves fit, either because of various reasons, they can quit at any point in time, and they will not go empty-handed, but carry with them some certificate, a diploma, or or an advanced diploma or a basic degree or an honors degree, and then they move out. So this is very, very important, and flexibility which has been brought in will be useful for about 5 to 10% candidates who normally used to be called as dropouts. Because, if you continue for 2 years in the university or college education, and the first year. So that much patience no one will have, and therefore they will all become dropouts. So education improvement will happen even if they can significant credit. Can move on to, and after he completes the minimum requirement of credits for getting a particular degree, he can earn that degree. A student of science can learn music, a student of engineering can learn painting, and so on. So I think multidisciplinary, flexible, and multiple exit and entry, which is very, very significant in terms of expansion, which is going to happen. The next vision is reaching 50% gross enrollment ratio in higher education by 2035. And this is a very challenging one, because today we already have 32 million plus. In fact, the numbers are increased actually. It's a last year figure. It's around 34, 35 million students already in the higher education. And if by 2035, we have to nearly double from present 26-27% gross enrollment ratio to 50%, means nearly doubling. That itself takes 32, 35 million to 70 million. But in the process, our population is also going to increase from present 1.4 billion to I don't know how much, likely to be 1.7 billion or so. So I think the gross enrollment ratio to reach 50%, there will be not less than, I think, very huge number of students, which is about 100 million students in the higher education. That is not the population also of many countries, and combined countries, 10 countries together also don't have that much population. So many students are going to be in higher education. So the other alternative which we are talking about is, can there be so many colleges and universities, expansion in terms of built area and brick and mortar universities is likely to be not, because land is a very precious commodity, and in especially bigger places, almost everything is already exhausted. So there will be a lot of online education, and that online education we have experimented during COVID times. Thankfully, earlier also all those facilities were existing, but we were not experimenting on them. We had only Swayam platform for what we call a MOOC platform of India, with about more than 2,500 plus courses in different domains, 1.2 crore. That means 12 million students using them. 114 countries are using them. So I think it has developed by itself in the last 3 years. But number of people actually using it for credit transfer, although UGC, AICT allowed 20% of the credits to be obtained, hardly we saw that it is not even 10% of the universities who were making use of this. But in the COVID time, because classes became suddenly stopped, campuses were all barren, and therefore wherever students went, their education was to continue, and we started online, use any platform that is available, whether it is Zoom, whether it is Google Classroom, whether it is Microsoft Teams, whether it is the WebEx. All of that were experimented by different institutions, their own LMS systems, and finally we have adopted to that. And this adoption will help us in moving forward in terms of the education, which is very important in terms of getting to 50% gross enrollment ratio, 100 million students, and so on and so forth. So I think that is one challenge which we are addressing. In the process, I will come now to a very interesting topic which Prachi would be interested, and even Janaka would be interested, is about internationalization. That's very, very significant and important, because when Shastri Institute, we are talking about, there is an association already developed between India and Canada, and similarly, there are many other opportunities which already exist, whether it is with US or Germany, or in terms of various fellowships and students going for higher studies, their students coming here for one semester exchange. There are twinning programs, so many things already were happening. but they were happening in very small pockets here and there. Now is a quantum jump which is going to be possible because there is huge empowerment. Because many times the regulations were so rigid that people, even though they were interested, were not able to make use of it. Now there is so much liberalization which is happening through this particular policy that it is going to be much easier for not only exchange of students and faculty on one side, which has already started happening for the last 3 years. You are all remembering about GAN, Global Initiative for Academic Networks, under which several thousand faculty from various countries have come to India, stayed here for 1 week, 2 weeks, and handled the courses. They continued, some of them, for 1 semester. They offered courses. I think that engagement began. And the research funding program, which already has started, which is called a SPARK, under which, unless there is an international collaboration, funding is not given by Indian government. Earlier, our whole projects used to be only essentially one institute, not even multi-department in many times. So we broke those walls, and then within the institute, different departments coming together, to different institutions within India coming together, to now global institutions coming together is what has already started happening under SPARK, which is significant, and under that also many projects are already sanctioned and they are continuing. And Minnie Thomas rightly pointed out about our new policy where National Research Foundation on the lines of NSF in US is going to be formed, which will have a huge funding mechanism which will be there, and they will give projects at a very high level. Whatever the cost that is required, that will be catered. Till today, we had a problem. There were a large number of funding agencies, but everyone had limited funds. So what used to happen is they used to fund, say that restriction will be, say, 2 million rupees or 10 million rupees or 5 million rupees. So different schemes had different limitations. And if your project or your research requires a larger fund, you won't get it from one source. So you have to apply to 3 or 4 agencies. You may be lucky that you will get from all the agencies. You may not get from one of the agencies, and whatever your desired outcome or goals were there, you cannot achieve them. I think that is how we were going through. So this will give an opportunity for having large-scale funding, including in humanities, social sciences, basic sciences, engineering, technology, medicine, law, in all fields. I think, therefore, it is a holistic research which is going to be possible with international collaboration. I think this is going to be a very fundamental, very important thing. And then foreign universities opening their university campuses in India, which was all talked about in different fora, but nothing practically was happening, and that is also opened up. That gate is also opening up. So, of course, some regulations have to be made based on the policy. Maybe it will take 6 months or 1 year, but the gate is open. So far, there are a lot of restrictions, and these restrictions are open. Similarly, some of the good Indian universities, IITs, can also set up universities abroad. It is not one-way communication, but two-way. So even why not some IIT or Indian Institute of Science or some NIT like Trichy can go to Canada and set up a university campus. There's a possibility. And similarly, Calgary can come here in India and then set up its campus. And it's open to all others. Of course, some restrictions will be there. There should be quality institutions. We also don't want our poor institutions to go and set up campuses abroad, because it will bring bad name. Similarly, a bad institute from any foreign country also, we don't want to invite them to India. So I think there will be some restrictions, no doubt, but there will be opening up of all this. And then, as I said, twinning program, semester-long, year-long fellowships, where you exchange faculty, students, and do short-term work. I think all of these are accessories, to the basic thing, which is starting of university campuses itself. So I think all of that have been great initiatives, and support for research and innovation is going to be a big key in terms of this National Research Foundation. But coming back, the basic philosophy, as I said in the beginning, Dr. Radhakrishnan report to 1964 or 1986 policy, that basic tenet will not change. For example, a country of our size with 1.4 billion population, 28 states and several union territories, different languages, different cultures, different dresses, different food habits, different religions. I think you will not get any country in the world where so much diversity exists and we still live together. I think that magic which has been there in our ethos, I think that has also to be expressed in some form or the other. And that's why our mantra of access and equity, because we want that children from rural areas, remote areas, tribal areas, where there are no educated people, they are first generation learners, we want to support them. And at the same time, because they are deprived, we will give them substandard education is not acceptable. And that's why along with access and equity, quality is also attached. And along with that, two other pillars are affordability and accountability. Because a private institution may charge a fee, which is required for giving a good quality education. But they should not be in the form of making huge profits. Actually, this concept of profiteering is not allowed in our country from ages. We call knowledge as one which is to be donated. You know, Vidyadan. In Hindi, we say Vidyadan. That means we donate. We don't charge for that. From that, we have come to a place where we charge fee, of course, since government cannot afford to give free education to everyone. But nevertheless, I think our ethos are that. And then the important aspect is about autonomy. Our system of affiliated colleges, which has been there for all these 70 years, interestingly, when AICT's report was published, which is called as Cow Committee report, which was constituted in 2015, after this government came first time, and then they told many things about that. India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and Pakistan are the only 4 countries in the world where this huge affiliation system. A university with about 400, 500, even 1,000 colleges are affiliated. And these universities are no more research universities. They are all like board of 10 standard, 12 standard who conduct examination and announce the result, nothing else. And from that, a university is a vibrant place where a lot of ideas have to germinate, where a lot of discussions have to happen, where a lot of innovation should happen. I think that role our universities have all missed out. Maybe some IITs, NITs, ISERs, and IIScs of the world are doing it. They are not more than 100. But rest of them are having great trouble. So we want to move away from that, and therefore culture of research, culture of debate, discussion on the university campus, if it has to happen, this affiliation business has to stop. And overnight, you cannot change 40,000 odd institutions into autonomous institutions. So there is going to be a philosophy of graded autonomy. Those who are doing well, they will be easily given autonomy. They will become sort of degree awarding institutions and become sort of universities. On the other side, there are 2 different types of universities which are being talked about. One of them is research intensive universities, and other one is teaching intensive universities. Even in US and Canada, there are universities. I am aware that there are highly research oriented. We call it research universities, but we are not naming them as research universities. We are calling them as research intensive universities, because there must be aspiration for a teaching university to migrate to a research university. And that provision is also being made here. So I think I have covered many of the things which I had in mind. Basically, it's a policy which is going to be game-changing, transformative, innovative, and making empowerment of citizenry and create good citizens for the future of not only our nation, which is very important. Prime Minister often talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat, that's self-sufficiency in terms of everything, but also support the entire globe in terms of what we have achieved and help others also in the process. Where there are famous statements, we call the entire earth as our mother. You know, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is one of the statements which we often talk about. And Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is also matched with Sarve Janaha Sukhino Bhavantu, which we say in Sanskrit, which means let the whole world be happy. We don't want any war, strife in the community of nations. We should all be peaceful. I think with that philosophy, a lot of values and ethics are also brought into the system. So I stop here, and if there are any questions and any ideas, we will discuss, debate, and move on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sahasrabudhe. Certainly, it has brought to the information of the audience how and how the NEP is going to be implemented, of course, what are the facets involved, and what are the opportunity and threats as well in terms of challenges that we can foresee coming in the time to come. Of course, as we all say that it is going to take time, and somewhere I read that in next 2 years we are preparing to gearing up to full-fledgedly plunge into this new education policy. So thank you for your insights, Dr. Sahasrabudhe.
Only 1 year, not, we don't have 2 years. We have only 1 year for doing all this.
Yes, so now we have only 1 year, and I really hope that by the end of this 1 year that we have with us, we would be ready to, plunge into it and do things as envisioned in this particular policy. Now I would like to invite Dr. Janaka Rohanpura from University of Calgary, because as Dr. Sahasrabudhe talked about, that internationalization is a big component in this policy, and Shastri being a binational organizations have great affiliation to this university in this regard. I would like to invite Dr. Janaka Rohanpura to share his reflections and observations after what he has heard about this new education policy, and as well as after the insights and the details that were shared by Dr. Anil Sahasrabudhe just now. Dr. Rohanpura, thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening to all our Indian friends, and then good morning to our Canadian friends as well. And thank you, Dr. Prachi, for inviting me to speak about and give my reflections, and also thank you, Dr. Thomas, and then Dr. Sahasrabudhe for giving your perspectives on that one. And I'm going to start with that the comment made by Dr. Sahasrabudhe about 2011, when I met him in Mumbai initially with Dr. Anil Malhotra, who is actually in the audience today, when he was the interim dean of engineering at the University of Calgary, where we developed a collaboration. But the collaboration, I think, stopped mainly because of regulations. So I'm going to start with that comment and say, because maybe the opportunity is now with the new education policy, which I really want to congratulate the government of India and all those who involved in terms of coming up with this one, although it took a little longer time, as Dr. Sahasrabudhe mentioned, that it was the right time to and then take this plan now into a more strategic level, into a detailed level, so that you can actually craft each one of them in a very detailed manner. So I want to talk about a couple of points, based on that. I mean, obviously, if I don't talk about the internationalization, then it is not, relevant. So I must talk about that, especially when you talk about the universities, the foreign universities, to come and set up campuses in India, right? Now, for that matter, I think the Indian government must look at all the different setups in the world. Okay, there are successful ones, there are very unsuccessful ones, right? So therefore, the government needs to really look at the advantages of each one of those systems to ensure that you bring the right universities into India, because we don't want to bring all kinds of different institutions, and then when you look at a foreign university coming to another land, you have a number of different motives. But at the end of the day, we have to safeguard the Indian system and to ensure that it actually would benefit India, right? Of course, when we talk about all the relationships and collaborations, there's multifaceted, objectives for the partner as well as India, and that's why I want to specifically mention that one, because I have seen examples of very good, excellent, as well as very poor setups around the world, right? And this is where, again, I'm just quoting this example mainly because our involvement. You may not find that many Canadian universities setting up satellite campuses abroad, right? Because Canadian system is very different compared to the other countries. And also there's quite a bit of a regulatory framework built through the provincial systems, education systems in Canada. But the one exception is, of course, in Doha, Qatar, at the University of Calgary, we have a campus in there, which is through the Qatari Foundation, right? So as an example, the Qatar Foundation has invited various universities around the world, top universities, to build campuses, but they put some strings to them about you can only put one program. Like University of Calgary, it's only nursing. Texas A&M University, it's only engineering. So it actually, and then they bring those specific universities to come there. And that's why when I also noticed that India is looking at the top 100, maybe it's not about the top 100, maybe it's about the top 100 subject areas. Like for example, sometimes you may find the top 100, which are the comprehensive universities, but you may find some universities that they probably are the top 10 in the world, but may not be under the top 100 in the world, right? So that therefore it's important that India to look at the strategic areas where do you want advancement, because I mean also you have great local universities, so you need to sort of ensuring that the capacity and expertise of those universities flourish. At the same time, identifying the gaps to find out which universities to come and why, so that you can actually have a much more broader and comprehensive system in there, right? The second one that got my attention very much is your research foundation, the National Research Foundation, which I think is a brilliant idea. The universities cannot survive. If you want to talk about the research intensive universities, there should be a huge ecosystem that needs to be supported to the universities. And I think this is, again, I'm using my own Canadian example. In Canada, we have tri-councils for 3 subject areas. And then there is science and engineering, council, natural sciences and engineering research council. Then there is another council called social sciences and humanities research council. And then also there is one for the medical research as well. But there are other institutions that are just hold on for a second. So there are other institutions that are supporting this thing, because we have programs that are supporting these research councils through a Canadian Foundation for Innovation, which is providing the infrastructure for researchers, right? And then there are Canada Research Chair programs, Canada Excellence Research Chair programs. So there is a kind of I would say extended a system that would provide the university research system and actually would benefit them. And then of course, India benefits from that, a MyTax program. We are that providing students to do a mobility between India and Canada as well, right? So therefore, when you build that one, I think, I would again encourage Indian government of India to look at some of those ecosystems developed in other countries and see how those are relevant to India. And then what would be the best way to build that one so that you can actually connect the university system. Again, at the end of the day, you want the national universities to be the best, right? So that this is the key thing. At the same time, providing support for your students so that the other universities would participate and develop programs. The third one is regulations. Again, I gave an example about Dr. Shastri would remember that, I mean, your current organization, AICT, there were some challenges in terms of AICT that which we could not do that collaboration between College of Engineering in Pune and the University of Calgary. So the regulations need to be flexible to ensure that you would build a good collaboration, right? And you're talking about twinning program, articulation program. I mean, I think during my last few years that I had discussions with Indian institutions about developing articulation, but I find that actually would prevent them doing those programs, so that it becomes more difficult because there's no consistency in that one. So therefore, compare India versus China, for example. The China, would provide more flexibility through the university system to do articulation, whereas India, currently you don't have that same flexibility, right? So therefore, if you want to look at the international collaborations on that one to support this national education policy, I think there are a number of things that you could do to ensure that it becomes flexible. I also like the comprehensive university system that is being proposed, right? I think, it is really important. I mean, your current system has lots of great universities with, some disciplines that are being very well recognized. But I think building those comprehensive universities would bring India to a great heights. So it's not about only science and engineering, but also adding social sciences, humanities, management, the medical side, and everything, sort of in a way. I mean, that's why in Canada we have a U15 consortium, the top 15 research consortia, right, which are pretty comprehensive nature, and I think it's really good in there. So those are my what I call, based on the current document, right, the current conceptual document that the thoughts that I had, and I said, we are really keen to build more collaborations with India. I believe that, and when I say we, actually I'm talking from Canada, right? Not only the University of Korea, I'm talking from Canada. I think it would benefit, and at the same time, I'm actually going to join with Dr. Anil Mehrotra, who put a question in there asking Dr. Shastri Buddhe to visit Canada and to visit the University of Calgary as well, because it's been all long due, but after COVID it is done, and we hope that that you would visit us, and then we could talk about many other developments before this national policy is implemented, and then also maybe that would enhance a good implementation of your new education policy. Thank you for inviting me to speak.
Thank you so much.
I would like to have a quick comment on the regulation part of it. Unfortunately, I was at the receiving end when I was director at College of Engineering Pune. Now I am sitting on the other side, so I think that makes the big difference. So I know what are the pain points actually. So that is one part.
Yeah.
Yes, the second part, very interestingly, is forget about collaboration with foreign countries. Within the country also, we had multiple regulatory bodies. I will give a classic one example that will suffice actually. So so-called deemed to be university, which is a new nomenclature, doesn't exist anywhere. Either you are a university or a college, but there are deemed to be universities, which are regulated by UGC, because this permission is given to award degrees by UGC. And then if they run a program such as say architecture or pharmacy, so there is a Pharmacy Council of India, Council of Architecture, they have to take their approval. And because in the AICTE Act there is pharmacy and architecture written, we also go there. So a college is stifled, or university is stifled by three agencies, which are all central agencies. Apart from that, there may be state, provincial, conditions and all that. So how can you function? Forget about foreign collaboration. There are problems within the country also. So this policy completely takes off all of that, and one single regulatory body, which is absolutely innovative, one for standard setting, one for funding, one for regulation, and one for accreditation. So I think 4 pillars or verticals are set up under that. So I think that will smoothen a lot of things. And as you rightly said, study from best examples of the world where it has succeeded, take those best practices and implement. I think, thank you very much for that suggestion, and whoever will come, I'm sure that they will be listening to all this and then do it. Because I may not be there, may not be there. Whoever is there by that time when it is getting implemented, they will have to do this. Okay.
Thank you so much for responding to Dr. Ravanpura's observations and reflections, Dr. Sahasrabudhe. And Dr. Ravanpura, I would say that these were really interesting insights that, in our further discussions with the Ministry of Education, we can pinpoint these things that have been reflected by you on this platform, so that they can consider it, these details, while the modalities have been devised to implement the policy, or the international, especially international component of this new education policy. So thank you for sharing your observations here with us. Dr. Thomas, would you have any reflection to bring in at this point?
No, I think we'll go for the questions, because we are running short of time. I think a lot of points are covered. Just my thanks to Dr. Anil and Dr. Janaka, and hope we will have more collaborations through NEP while it is implemented. I think you can go for a few questions so that, audience
Okay.
choices are.
I'm seeing four, five, multiple. There are many more. So I think at least few of them we can take up actually. No?
Absolutely. And there were questions that were sent in advance, knowing that this webinar is going to be held. So would you like to take up on your own the most relevant one?
I will start and be brief so that I think we can cover as many questions as possible.
Absolutely.
Starting with the suggestion that teaching in mother tongue in the beginning, we should accept the English terms. Obviously, especially in science, technology, we can't invent new terms. We should use the same term, but the language, sentences would be in the mother tongue. So that child will start understanding them, but also will get used to the technology terms or science terms as well. So that's very, very important. Then foundational education is actually in terms of playfulness, a lot of games, stories, no script writing. See, when you want to write say a particular script for a child of that age at 3, it is very difficult, to rewrite that. Whereas if you tell stories in that language or talk about games in that language, I think children will start understanding. That's a very important feature of the early child development and education. Mehrot Raji, we are both with the same name, Anil, and your invitation I have accepted sometime when it's possible. In fact, last year we were supposed to go for our the program where you said about my tax, as well as our 10 women-led entrepreneurs go to Canada every year. So under one of those programs. But anyway, next year after COVID, we will again come. Then first 2 years of graduation from one university and other one from another. See, I think that twinning program concept is something like that. But when I said you go from one university to the other and multi-university and still take a degree from one university, there are some challenges. For example, different universities, different countries define credits in different ways. So unless there is rationalization and some kind of understanding, I think that is what we are working already. Credit banking and converting your credits into a formal degree later. Yes, it can be possible. A foreign university campus in India can be housed in one of the Indian universities. Why not? So it's very easily feasible and possible. Thanks for Sasrubde. Okay, fine. Regarding credit transfer, I think this is a real challenge. Actually, even within the country, even within the IIT system, there are IITs who consider one lecture hour per week as one credit. There are some IITs who consider one lecture hour per week is equivalent to 2 credits. So within the country, when there are so many definitions, naturally this is going to be a little challenge, and we'll have to address how do we equate them. Flexibility is the most important factor to the quality of education. Absolutely, that's very, very important. And this has been taken care of in terms of all variety of flexibility which is given to institutions. But I will give you a rider. We talk about flexibility, but whenever autonomy and flexibility is given, many institutions do not know how to use it. And that's why one of the aspects which I did not touch upon is leadership development. I think that's very important, that even if you are empowered, I don't want to use my power. I think that is a tragedy. Many times it happens, and therefore leadership development becomes very significant and important. Webinars, of course, such webinars are very useful. We will continue to have them, and Prachi is very good at that. And she had held so many, and I was watching some of them, and I said, I was keeping asking her, what is the next one, etc. Then he said, why not you? So that question itself came from me, and answer was, why don't you have on NEP itself, so that's how it has happened. How could you evolve intensified equilibrium between teaching and research? I think all academicians are aware this balance is very, very important. Good researcher sometimes is not a good teacher, and some good teacher may not be a researcher. That's true. But by and large, it is given that a person who is engaged in research, obviously he will bring the fresh things, what is happening in the domain, to the classroom, and therefore teaching automatically improves. There may be exceptions, but by and large, teaching and research are two, like left arm and right arm, both have to be working together, only then it will happen. And that's why a lot of significance on research. And research intensive universities does not mean they will not teach. They will also have teaching programs, but the action will be, their teaching load will be less and they will have to do more research. And similarly, vice versa, in the teaching teaching intensive universities, there will be more teaching and little research they will also have to do for their promotions and regularization and so on. I think whatever came, I've been doing it. Anyone else?
There are a couple of hands.
No. One thing I had skipped also about regulatory agency. I had skipped. I told you in the answer. But I knew that Janaka will ask that. The regulatory problems. So I had left it. But what I also forgot is about examination reforms. I think our examination system in India has been mostly based on rote learning or memory-based questions, and that's why many candidates who score very high marks, we call 95%, 90%. Even Madam and we scored very high marks, but when we came to the actual field, we found great difficulties because we never did actual hands-on work many times. So I think that is being transformed and based on Bloom's taxonomy, understanding, analytical ability, critical thinking, analysis and synthesis, then innovation, creativity, how question papers can be set on all these domains so that we really test a person holistically. I think that's also part of the policy. Some question is indirectly reflecting that, and I think that's also taken care of. Now slowly more questions are coming, but if you list them out and send me an email, I will answer them on email.
Okay. Sure.
Dr. Kaul, so sorry for the interruption. There is one question I see for Dr. Rivanpura as well. Would you like to read that, or maybe
read out?
I can read out now. Okay. Dr. Rivanpura, this is from one of the registrants. Canada has very strong institutions for theoretical studies. Can you enlighten us a bit about how Canada went about setting up such high quality institutions?
Thank you. I think, I think this is what I indicated that, the Canada, the education system, I think, we have a number of different institutions. I mean, our whole education system is 99.8% or 9% is a public system. And, but again, I think through the federal government and I think through the provincial governments that the Canada have done remarkably well in terms of setting up campuses and also to make sure that we add the complementarity into those disciplines, and so that we would have strengths. Like for example, in Alberta, for example, we have two great universities at the top level: University of Alberta and the University of Calgary, where most of the disciplines are similar, but in some cases, like for example, University of Alberta has a program in dentistry, University of Calgary has a program in veterinary medicine, right? And then similarly that, that there are other disciplines in other places where when you build up campuses so that you would actually put the resources to support them. But, going beyond that, I think, one thing that I just want to support that Dr. Sahasrabudhe mentioned, when you talk about those exams, I think work integrated learning, experiential learning is two critical parts that needs to be enhanced into the education. Right, which needs, I think, that's again another example that I want to say that from Canadian perspective that what we are emphasizing, right? So that it really enhances the students while they're in undergraduate education to get going. And also, a lot of these, I think especially, I noticed this example in South Asia particularly. Our undergraduate education is fantastic, but I think we need a lot more energy at the higher level of the research, postgraduate education. With the research side, I think with the new policy, what you are emphasizing is really going to be a good, and then it would support. But again, all these things come from funding, because the government bodies actually provide funding and facilitations. And so therefore, you need to make sure that that you consider the government funding, you look at good affiliations with the professional associations, professional bodies for accreditation, right? And then cut down the bureaucracy, as Dr. Shastrabuddhe mentioned, so that you would provide a more flexibility, but ensuring quality assurance. At the end of the day, yes, you have to maintain the quality assurance, and that's why you need to have the professional bodies for accreditation, right? But ensuring that all these things would actually enhance the system. And I hope with the policy that is being crafted that it would go further. I saw a couple of hands in addition to the questions, so maybe would ask the Sikhi probably to look at those ones as well.
Yeah, sure. I think because the time is being over, what we can do, as Anilji has suggested, we can have these questions and send it out to you. If it was addressed to you, Dr. Ravinpura, and if it was addressed to Dr. Shahastabuddhe, we will get in touch with your offices, respective offices, so that these can be responded individually, because the time will not allow us to take all questions right now, but we respect the questions being placed after all these deliberations that were presented by, Anilji and Janika here. So thank you all. From Shastri Institute side, I would like to thank all of you for being present, especially the attendees. It was a wonderful interaction in terms of question answer that we have experienced, which means the interaction was very active, and whatever was spoken and presented were very well received and led to those kind of questions for all of us. So to conclude, would you like to say anything, Dr. Thomas? Or we can.
I just would like to thank everyone once again, the attendees and the expert Professor Shahastabuddhe and Professor Janaka, and all the Sikhi past president. I can see John Reed attending and John Kershaw attending, Dr. Mehrotra, and all other Sikhi functionaries and well-wishers. Thank you so much for taking time out, and I hope NEP will lead us into more collaboration with Canadian institutions. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, all of you once again, and have a good day, Dr. Ravinpura, and have a good night, Dr. Shahastabuddhe. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Good night, Dr. Thomas, here too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.